Greetings and welcome to this week's highlights from across the district. On Thursday, May 22nd, Columbus City Schools welcomed The Ohio State University President Walter Ted Carter to the Linden community as part of a special neighborhood tour focused on the 10 big ideas of Linden. We got to see one of those ideas in action, addressing early childhood experiences, when we visited the Linden Park Early Childhood Education Center. During the visit, we showcased how CCS is preparing our youngest learners for success through high-quality early learning environments and strong community partnerships. Thank you to our friends at The Ohio State University and Ralph Carter of We Are Linden for making this visit possible. Together, we are building a brighter future, starting with our earliest learners. On Friday, May 23rd, Columbus Downtown High School celebrated 165 seniors during this year's Career and Technical Education Completer Ceremony. Our talented scholars completed one of 13 CTE programs, gaining hands-on experience and industry-aligned skills that will serve them well in the workforce, college, and beyond. The ceremony highlighted their technical achievements as well as their dedication to leadership and academic excellence. Just a few days later, on Tuesday, May 27th, we recognized 372 seniors from Fort Hays Career Center who completed one of 25 CTE programs. Fort Hays offers half-day, industry-focused courses in programs like health technology, construction technology, and digital design and graphics, equipping students with real-world skills and setting them on a path towards success. To all of our CTE completers, this moment is a result of your hard work, and we couldn't be more proud of you. Congratulations! As the day of celebrations continued, on Friday, May 23rd, we had the opportunity to honor 7 exceptional scholars in the Fort Hays Career Center's Job Training Program for their accomplishments in food services. These scholars played an essential role in preparing over 1 million meals for our elementary schools this year. Throughout the program, they developed real-world culinary and operational skills, established strong workplace habits, and consistently showed up each day ready to learn and contribute. This achievement was made possible by the dedicated teachers and mentors who guided and supported them throughout the year. We thank you for your patience, encouragement, and belief in every scholar. To our food services trainees, job well done. On completing the job training program, we are CCS proud of you. Over the past week, I've had the honor of celebrating with family, staff, and community members as we proudly recognize the Columbus City Schools Class of 2025. Every graduation ceremony reflected something truly special: resilience, unity, and the spirit of possibility. Our graduates have demonstrated what it means to persevere, grow, and rise to meet the moment with pride and purpose. As students from across our 20-plus high schools walked across the stage, each one carried their diploma and shared story shaped by determination, encouragement, and personal growth. To the class of 2025, your journey is just beginning. Whatever path you choose, I hope you carry forward the values you built here: curiosity, compassion, leadership, and the courage to dream big and achieve more. Congratulations on reaching this milestone. You are ready to lead, you are ready to serve, and you are ready to shape the future. These have been your highlights from around the district for June 3rd. Thank you so much for joining us.
Everyone, and welcome to today's Tuesday, June 3rd regular business meeting for the Columbus City School Board of Education. Mr. Treasurer, can we call the roll?
Ms. Ingalls.
Present.
Ms. Reyes.
Here.
Mr. Simmons.
Present.
Ms. Vera.
Here.
Vice President Adair.
Present.
President Cole.
I'm here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we raise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
All right. Good evening, Dr. Chapman. Good evening, Mr. Internal Auditor, Mr. Treasurer. I'm so on fire and still very excited about having experienced our graduations. Over 2,400 students. It's just an amazing experience. I want to just personally, before we even get this meeting started, thank all of our staff, our administrators, our teachers, our students, their families, our safety and security, for all of the work that they did to ensure that everything went as smoothly as possible. I want to definitely state this, though, and make it very clear that it is absolutely important that we uphold the decorum of our institutional activities as it relates to graduation specifically. It is important that we are there to ensure that our students give every bit of the attention that they deserve, every bit of the opportunity that they deserve to graduate and graduate without problems. I know of one incident that occurred, but thank goodness that we had safety and security there to ensure that there wasn't a problem that went further. But I think it's absolutely important that we state from this table, that we will not accept any behavior from any family, any person coming to our activities, whether it's an athletic activity or an academic activity, and disrupt it in a way that causes challenges for safety and security of our children and our staff. It is inexcusable. It is not acceptable. And I'm going to ask the superintendent that should we find out who these individuals are, maybe it's just that we have to have some consequences that come with that. Consequences that mean that you may not be able to come to another activity. So I want to put it out from this table moving forward that our activities are to be upheld with every bit of respect and decorum. And if you cannot do that, there are consequences. And this organization respectfully can show you better than we can tell you. All right, moving on. I'd like to go right into, there's an amendment.
Yes,
Madam Vice President.
Yes, before we begin and adopt our agenda, we need to make a correction from our last meeting. So in item 2.1, I make a motion to amend an item previously adopted, specifically to remove Lee Cole from the personnel agenda from the May 20th meeting.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Call the roll.
Ms. Vera?
Yes.
Ms. Ingles?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Vice President Adair?
Yes.
President Cole?
I abstain.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go on into, just before we adopt the agenda, I'll explain what's going on today. First and foremost, we'll have our public speakers come up. We'll welcome them in section 4.1. Then we'll go into board matters, where we'll go through presentation and also a committee appointment. We'll also go into a realignment update in section 6 with the superintendent. We'll go into executive reports between 7.1 and 8.1, and 9.1 to 24.4 will approve the consent agenda, and then in the 25.1 onward section, we'll go into other legislation, one by one that'll be approved, and then we'll go into executive session after which executive session wraps up. As every meeting, we will definitely adjourn, and we will not return to this room. All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Ms. Ingles?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Vera?
Yes.
Vice President Adair?
Yes.
President Cole?
Yes. All right. We'll move right into our public comment. We have two speakers. The first is Ms. Sarah Silver. Sarah Silver, welcome. Good evening. You have 3 minutes to provide comment. Welcome this evening.
Thank you so much. Good evening, President Cole, Vice President Adair, Treasurer Cook, Superintendent Dr. Chapman, and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Sarah, and I serve as the Transportation Director for a local charter school. I've spent the last year advocating on behalf of my students and their families who have been affected by Columbus City Schools' transportation noncompliance. Several days ago, many of our families received notices that their children would be declared impractical to transport, despite none of these students, or any of our students, having yet applied for transportation for the 2025-2026 school year. The premature determination is deeply concerning and raises further questions about due process and transparency in the determination proceedings. As you are aware, once a student is deemed impractical for transportation, families may request a mediation with the district and the Department of Education and Workforce. What you may not be aware of is that the mediations requested at the beginning of the year did not begin taking place until 11 days ago. None of those families received transportation while they waited the entire year, despite the law saying that students should begin receiving transportation immediately and until the mediation process is complete. CCS has cited a lack of resources as a barrier to transporting charter school students. Yet we continue to see resources allocated to settlements, penalties, and practices that result in funding reductions, resources that could instead be redirected toward fulfilling the district's legal obligations. We fear that this pattern may be repeating in the matter before you tonight. Last year, a member of this board acknowledged that the sudden reduction in transportation services was aimed at bringing students out of the charters and back to their district schools. This raises serious concerns about equity and intent. Last year saw us lose a significant number of students because their families were left with no options. A district's funding and financial interests should never be prioritized over the interests of the students it serves, and families deserve to exercise their legal right to school choice without facing systemic obstacles. While charter schools were profoundly mischaracterized in last August's meeting, the truth is that despite lower funding and fewer resources, charter schools continue to outperform district schools, especially with regards to disadvantaged families who are the ones most disproportionately impacted by the decision not to provide transportation. There are so many reasons why a family chooses to send their student to a school like ours, and while the reasons may vary, the right to choice is fundamental, and ensuring this right means ensuring access to transportation. I respectfully urge this board to reflect on the very real and unjust consequences of last year's vote, and to carefully consider the limited data informing this current determination. Thank you for your time and your consideration of the students and families who depend on your leadership.
Thank you. Good evening. Madam Superintendent, is there someone from the administration present that could talk to her, give her some measure of clarity?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Ms. Silver, I think there's someone who's available to speak with you. Thank you. We'll move to our next speaker, who is Curtis Peace. Good evening, Mr. Peace.
Hello, my name is Curtis, and I'm here to represent the Ohio Coalition to Protect Trans Lives. First, I'd like to wish you all a happy Pride Month. The recognition of June as LGBTQ Pride Month has its origins in the Stonewall riots of 1969. These riots broke out spontaneously in response to ongoing violent police raids on bars like the Stonewall Inn, which were known to harbor queer and gender nonconforming people. Homosexuality at this time was considered a mental illness and was all but outright criminalized. Cross-dressing, the act of dressing out of accordance with what has been deemed acceptable for the gender you were assigned at birth, was a criminal offense, one that could carry years in a psychiatric facility. Those who were caught up in police raids like that of the Stonewall Inn were outed in newspapers, often leading to the loss of their jobs, their housing, and the support of wider society. Of course, we've made tremendous social progress since 1969. Through the tireless work of community activists and organizers, and courageous acts of defiance and protest by the LGBTQ community, we've come to understand homosexuality, transgenderness, and gender nonconformity not as criminal acts or mental illness, but as normal and healthy elements of the human experience. But sadly, it's clear that our rights and our dignity were not won once and for all. We've entered a political era where previous gains are being clawed back at every level, and trans youth are on the front lines. As we all know, trans students in Ohio are now prohibited from using the restroom that aligns with their gender identity. Trans youth in our state and elsewhere are facing attacks on their ability to play sports, receive gender-affirming care, and use their correct name and pronouns. All of this is being done with the intent to scapegoat and shove trans and queer people back into the closet. On March 19th, Columbus City Schools stabbed its students in the back when it reverted all trans students' chosen names to their birth names in its system, absent any legal obligation to do so. Not only were these students dead named to their teachers and their peers, but many were outed as trans for the first time to their fellow students, opening them up for bullying and harassment in a disturbing parallel to the forced outing of homosexuals in newspapers in the 1960s. My message to you, the school board, is this: reverse your dead naming policy and commit to noncompliance with unjust and transphobic legislation. Stand on the side of social justice and progress, not against it. Stand with your students and community, not against us. And happy Pride Month.
Thank you, Mr. Peace. All right, we'll move right into board matters. Madam Vice President, you have a proposal.
Yes, thank you. As proposed and reviewed by the ETRM committee last meeting, we put forward the proposal from the administration to increase the latchkey rates, and I've asked someone from there, from administration, Dr. Baker, to come and just quickly brief the board and be available for questions. And I've asked her to also address Board Member Vera's question around engagement.
Good evening, Dr. Baker.
Good evening, President Cole, Vice President Adair, Board. Today I'm going to give you a brief update on latchkey and our request to increase. The current tuition fees for latchkey are $65 for morning care, $70 for afternoon, and $85 for both morning and afternoon care. 2 years ago, I came before the Finance and Appropriations Committee requesting an increase and requesting that increase would occur every other year based on projections that I received from the Treasurer's Office. And so today, you can see up there is the sustainability analysis, and it shows without the tuition increase where we would be in the red at the end of next year, but with the increase, we'll be able to maintain through 2029. So what we're requesting is a $5 increase. So we're asking for the morning care to increase to $70, the afternoon care to $75, and then for both morning and afternoon care to increase to $90. Specifically, I think Board Member Vera wanted to know about our communication plan for a family engagement and what we've done so far. And so I have detailed that there. We have posted the possibility of the increase pending board approval on the website, so families have that access to that on the website. There were flyers posted at each latchkey location. When families go onto the actual website to register, the notification is there as well. To date, there have not been any complaints. 13 of the 18 sites are already full, and registration opened on the 12th. And the following sites I listed there still have openings, but historically, we have the Liberty, Old Orchard, and Shady Lane are usually waitlisted by the end of the summer. I can take any questions now.
Are there, Dr. Pierce first?
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yes.
So it's not that students or families will be complaining. Are there any families that have in the past registered that you anticipate to re-register and have not, and maybe they are citing that it is because of the cost being prohibitive?
Not to our knowledge. We haven't had any families. And the families who are already enrolled have priority enrollment. So a lot of those sites that are full, those families were already enrolled, and so it did not prohibit, it doesn't seem that that would prohibit them.
And you guys have done a check on your own in the system to see whether or not?
The repeat families?
Yes, so you've done a check within
Yeah.
the system to see?
We have not done a check to see if any of the families who were currently enrolled are not enrolling next year. No,
Is that possible to do that to see?
we can, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. Board Member Vera.
Thank you, Dr. Baker, for this information. I just want to make sure I understand. So in terms of the community engagement, it sounds like we posted flyers at all the sites, in addition to what sounds like information was put on the website. But was there any actual conversation with staff members at these sites directly with families, is my first question. And then my second question was, were these flyers translated in multiple languages?
So no, not to my knowledge, the flyers were not translated. The families come in, and the Latchkey staff have communication with them about enrollment or about registration. So none of the teachers have reported that any families have said anything to them about the fee increase or a hardship.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, was there a specific strategy that included like designated times and dates that the staff was supposed to have these conversations, and was there a formalized process on how we collected feedback from those interactions?
No, there wasn't a formal.
Thank you.
Board Member Vera, is there a concern or an idea that you want to make sure that we are
Yes.
translating, making accommodations for our foreign language speakers?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was the opinion time. I guess I just wanted to gather the facts, but I do have major concern that this information was not translated in multiple languages, nor was there a direct incentive or communication strategy to ensure that families really understood. As a parent, especially when you're running in and out to get kids, oftentimes you don't necessarily look at the board, or it may be something you may have overlooked, especially if you're juggling multiple. I just don't want this to be a surprise for our families. Even though we've posted a flyer, we put it in the website, I think oftentimes we miss the step of meeting our community where they're at. And I think that if there hasn't been a strategy that actually said, okay, this Tuesday, this Thursday, we're going to bring this up during pickup time, we're going to bring this up during drop-off time, that we could really gauge, do our families know that this is coming? Not saying we don't need to do it. My concern is we really haven't done enough of the engagement around making sure families know that this is coming, especially at the fact that none of these flyers or any of this communication was translated in multiple languages when we know we have a very diverse district. So that is of concern to me.
Dr. Pierce?
I just have a question of clarification. Is this proposal time sensitive? It's my understanding that it is. So
Yes.
can we just have a point of clarification around the time sensitivity of this? Board Member Adair?
Yeah,
Or
Dr. Baker,
whomever.
you want to answer that?
Yes, so it's time sensitive in the sense that if we don't have the increase this year, next year, we will potentially go into the red.
And so, again, a point of clarification, when does this proposal have to be passed by this board to be enacted? That's what I'm trying to get at.
The intent is to propose a motion this evening. So there'll be a motion made this evening and a subsequent vote. Yes.
So given Board Member Vera's concerns, I think they are worthy and valid, that there needs to be additional conversation within the community to ensure everybody is clear of this potential increase in the fees. However, understanding that it's time sensitive, I wonder what our board can do to compromise and meet our community need where it may be, even though it has not been expressed.
So, Dr. Chapman, from your president and the board, this is not a gotcha moment.
No, not at all.
What this is an opportunity to see where there's continual improvement and where we can take some extra steps to ensure that we meet families, in the words of my colleague, where they need us to meet them. Is it possible moving forward then that we be able to incorporate a foreign language dynamic into this and be able to share that with parents and families throughout the district moving forward?
Absolutely. So I'm just, from my understanding, based on what we've discussed and what was shared, is that there was certainly an opportunity for the latchkey teachers to have conversations with the families when they registered, and that information was also shared with them when they registered. But if that's not the case for the 13 sites that are already full, I guess the question would be for the sites that are already full, my understanding is that they are aware of this increase. Is there a request for us to go back to those families to clarify their understanding? Or are we talking about the 5 sites that are not full where there's an opportunity for new families to register. Because that could be done between now and whenever they register. Like, so there's families that have already registered, then there's families that have not registered. We can certainly double down on our communication in multiple languages, as well as, you know, contact. Obviously, that contact would be, you know, our families are not engaging in latchkey over the summer, but it is, certainly time sensitive, and there are certainly implications that we would have to plan for if the board is not able to take action or does not have the information or reassurance to take action at this time.
I think that we could do it next meeting. I think we just need to act before the end of this biennium, and it would need to be implemented for the next cycle, for the next, not biennium, fiscal year. It would, right, Treasurer, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, that'd be correct. We also have a meeting on the 26th for our end-of-the-year wrap-up budgetary that we could add this item to, if that would help the board.
So this would be just a point of,
I was ready tonight. Go ahead.
so just a point of question of clarification. So this would be implemented FY '26?
Next school year.
Next school year,
FY
Yes.
'26?
25, 26.
So that's why I asked that question that way. FY '26 kicks in differently than school year 25, 26 would kick in. So I guess my question would be, could we delay the increase by a couple of months? What is the point at which we really need this fee to take hold? Is it August? Is it November?
So I believe, and I would have to look at the collection schedule, we would need it to go into effect prior to the start of the school year in August. So we would have the meeting in July, or I'm sorry, the end of June.
The board
take
needs
board
to
action
take
on?
action before July 1.
That is correct.
Yes. Question from board member.
Thank you, President Cole. Dr. Baker, I was wondering if you could speak to, were any other options considered besides a fee increase, or maybe have been considered in the past that we've already ruled out as not feasible?
So we're a self-sustaining, so it's the revenue from the tuition is what sustains the program, and our teachers are, our staff is employed by the district.
And then you said, I think you spoke to it a little bit earlier, but last school year, most of the sites were full?
Yes.
Okay. And then I just had a bit of an anecdotal question. Could you speak to the language diversity of the students who participate in the Latchkey program, as we're thinking about, were families able to, were the signs accessible?
So I don't have that information right now, but I can get that information because it's included in the Student Information Center. So when I go back and pull the list of students who've already registered, I can get that information, and
Okay.
we'll need that anyway to, if we're moving forward with the translation and communication and sending that home, I'll have that information. So I should be able to have that by next week.
Thank you. And then I just had one last question, if I may. So this fee increase would apply to families who have already registered for this upcoming school year?
Correct.
Okay. When they filled out, was their information communicated about the fee increase as they registered?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Board member Vera.
Yeah, I just want to make a point of clarification. I'm not opposed to the fee increase. I just want to ensure that we did everything we possibly could to really inform our families. And so I want to be, I want to make sure I make that point. And I think anytime we're providing any kind of communication to our community, our families, translation services should always be a part of that strategy. It shouldn't be just, well, we'll add it now. Like, that should always be how we communicate with our families. So I think it's more of just understanding that, the fact that it's an afterthought and we do have sites already filled and sites that are not filled, I think that's a part of the misstep that we need to be thinking about just in terms of communication strategy as a whole.
Okay, so with that, I think that this seems to be, hold on just a moment, this seems to be an easy fix, at least from the standpoint of informing, Joe and Jane family member for every student that's already enrolled or anticipating enrollment in some of these spots that still have available seats. Is that accurate to say?
I would think so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
With that, you had a thought, Vice President?
Well, I feel like I'm going to go ahead and make the motion then. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the $5 a week increase for the next school year for all categories.
It's been motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Board
I would
Member
like to
Reyes.
offer an amendment to the motion. How do I put that on the floor?
Motion for an amendment.
I would like to motion for the friendly amendment.
We have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second at this point in time, so we need to take the vote on that.
Correct. Then we'll come back.
So can we call the roll?
Oop, go ahead.
So we have a motion and a second on the main motion.
Uh-huh.
We now have a motion to amend that main motion. So then the next question would be, is there a second to the, well, I guess you need to state the amendment first and then
Yeah.
there's a second.
So
is
the
the amendment?
amendment would be that there's a commitment on the part of administration to double down on the communication and translation for our families that are seeking interested information who are English as a second language.
Second.
Motioned and seconded. Can we call the roll?
Yes, Ms. Ingles.
Yes.
Dr. Pierce.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes. Mr. Simmons.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
Vice President Adair.
Yes.
President Cole.
Yes.
Motion carried. On the amendment, now we're back to the original. We have a motion and a
amendment.
second. Dr. Pierce.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
Mr. Simmons.
Yes.
Ms. Ingles.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
Vice President Adair.
Yes.
President Cole.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We'll continue in board matters with committee appointment update. The committee update appointment is for academic and facilities alignment. A gentleman by the name of Stephen Miller. Thank you for joining us on this committee to help us continue our work and focus on improving academics and also ensuring that we have all of the things that it takes to realign facilities to strengthen academics in the district. Mr. Miller is Vice President of the Institutional Advancement at Wilberforce University. He brings extensive experience in fundraising, strategic planning, and educational development. His experience aligning institutional goals with resource investments directly supports our committee's efforts to continue our endeavors. So again, thank you so much for joining this committee. I look forward to the great work we're going to continue together. All right. We will move into the superintendent's report, the update for realignment. Good evening, Dr. Chapman.
Good evening, President Cole, Vice President Adair, members of the board and our community. With this evening, we are returning to a conversation about a path to aligning our facility resources to our students' needs. Today, we'll begin by anchoring the conversation to the vision and values that the Columbus community has set forth for our students and our system. The vision and values of our community are centered in the improvement of instruction and the student experience. Therefore, our vision for instruction must drive our plan for our facilities. We'll spend some time today presenting some of the key drivers we'll focus on to align our capital resources to provide improved instructional environments and improved student experiences. Unfortunately, fortunately, it will become clear that our current portfolio of schools and their current configurations do not align to that vision. Change, while difficult, is necessary. By identifying the 5 buildings for realignment, the board took the first step toward closing this gap. Tonight's presentation will provide an outline of the plan provided to the board to move instructional programming from these buildings. Again, this is just the first step towards achieving this vision. We know that to completely achieve this alignment will require additional work, including additional closures, renovations, and new construction. Our community made its vision for our students clear by establishing the portrait of a graduate. This forward-looking vision includes traits that are necessary to compete in a 21st century workforce, including adaptability, communication, creativity, critical thinking, global empathy, and use of technology. To bring this vision to reality will take time and the alignment of our resources to support the changes in instruction and student experience necessary to support this vision for our students. Knowing this, the board established a series of goals that act as steps on the pathway to this vision. They include strengthening reading proficiency by 3rd grade, strengthening math proficiency by 7th grade, and increasing 4-year on-time graduation rate. To support the work on the goals, the board also provided some guidance that reflects and support the values of the community. In effect, how the community expects us to move forward toward these goals and the overall vision. The community was clear that it wanted Columbus City Schools to ensure that students would receive intervention supports to ensure access and support to our curriculum, that we consider the whole child as we provide learning experiences and environments for our students, that we align our resources to ensure equitable learning opportunities across our system, and that we ensure that our learning environments foster a sense of belonging for all students and staff. As you can see, instruction and student experience are at the core of this vision. Unfortunately, our building resources are not fully aligned with this vision in its current state. Knowing that realignment was a necessary first step, our board began a process of planning and engagement which culminated in a vote on December 17th to repurpose 5 of our facilities. Those 5 facilities are Broadley Elementary, Moeller Elementary, McGuffey Elementary, which is the site of the Columbus Alternative High School program, Buckeye Middle School, and West Broad Elementary. Knowing that this work will take time, the board directed the superintendent to develop a plan for these schools by June of this year. Today, we'll present that plan, but before we do, I think that it's important to focus on how buildings can and should support student instruction and experience, and how in many cases, our facilities and their use is currently, in its current state, not aligned to this vision. So what is the vision for our capital plan to better meet the needs of our students? Let's take a look. We know that our students deserve modern and more modernized facilities that are designed to support 21st century learning. Over time, our learning communities and our feeder patterns will be organized around 10 to 12 larger high schools and feeder patterns. Each of these communities would be supported by strong neighborhood schools with regular grade bands, elementary schools with grades pre-K through 5, traditional middle schools with grades 6 through 8, and traditional high schools serving students in grades 9 through 12. Larger schools support more robust learning and extracurricular opportunities for our students. I'll come back to this in a few seconds as we want to talk a little bit more about our facilities and our current state. And our state also has school size requirements that need to be met in order for the state to provide financial support to school districts for the renovation or replacement of a school. For example, for elementary schools, the state requires that the building serve at least 600 students. For middle school, it's 800 students, and for a high school, it's 1,200 students. Why? Again, larger schools provide improved academic and extracurricular offerings, such as more diverse academic offerings, more sections, more programming for AP courses, college credit plus courses, and electives, more opportunities to participate in upper division athletic programs and offerings, expanded extracurricular offerings as well. Moving forward, we also want to pay particular attention to the experiences of students who receive special education or language support services. By focusing on neighborhood learning communities, we have an opportunity in CCS to improve the experiences of our students who receive these services by serving them in their home school or within their larger neighborhood learning community. I'm also passionate about universal pre-K. Our students need that additional instructional time in order to be successful readers by the end of 3rd grade. This realignment will also provide us with the opportunity to ensure that we have space in our elementary schools to extend the learning to our earliest learners by adding pre-K programming. Finally, our community has already made significant investments in our schools. when we think about several of the buildings that have been invested as a part of our F&P work, let's work to ensure that we make the best use of those facilities, meaning more students have access to the buildings that have already been modernized and invested in. And unfortunately, we as a community have a lot of work to do to close this gap between our vision and our current reality related to our facilities. Let's take a moment to consider a few of these gaps. Currently, we know this slide should be familiar to us. We've shown this slide several times before. Currently, we know that in CCS we have lots of small schools across the district. We have 48 elementary schools with enrollments fewer than 350 students, and 20 of our secondary schools, which includes both middle and high schools, with enrollments fewer than 500 students. Small elementary schools can only afford unified art staff that are shared across schools. This complicates school scheduling and makes it difficult for staff that are moving across and between schools. It is also more difficult for staff to feel like an embedded part of the school community and collaborate with their grade level or content peers on a regular basis because they're simply not at the building. They're sharing their time amongst multiple buildings. And this ultimately limits the breadth of opportunities that are offered to our students. Small secondary schools cannot offer the same breadth of courses as larger schools in CCS. And the classes that are offered are often only offered in a single period, which makes challenges for scheduling. This limits access to courses for students and requires staff to prep for many different courses, and means teachers often don't have colleagues teaching the same course to collaborate with within their school. Small schools do not have the same consistency of robust, competitive extracurricular options as larger schools would. This means less options for different sports, teams, and clubs, less consistency in extracurricular offerings from year to year, fewer levels of competition, example, just one team instead of freshman, junior, varsity, or junior varsity and varsity, and a lower level of competitiveness by participating in a lower division in the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Currently, the full range of special ed and English language learning programming can only be offered at a subset of our schools across the district. This prevents many families from being able to choose their neighborhood school or the school that's closest to them, or forces them to refuse services to stay at their preferred school. In fact, 57% of our students who receive special ed services attend schools outside of their neighborhood. For our students for whom English is not their first language, over half, 53%, attend a school outside of their neighborhood. In both cases, this can result in students needing to travel far distances to a school with the right programming to best meet their educational needs, which again is a challenge for us. While it would be ideal to have schools with standard grade configurations, we have a number of communities across this system with non-traditional grade bands. And we need about twice as many pre-K seats to support universal pre-K to help ensure the success of our early learners. Finally, many of our school facilities are long past their planned lifespan. On average, our schools are 50 years old. Some are well over 100 years old. In addition to not being flexibly designed to support changes in instruction, these buildings are very expensive to maintain. The gaps are clear. The board named these buildings as the first step in closing these gaps that we've named. The remainder of this presentation will focus on the plan to repurpose and realign these sites and begin to realign the schools and programs to better meet the needs of our students. And now I'll hand the presentation over to Dr. Brown to walk through the plan.
So as you were listening to the superintendent today, it should be evident that there's some guiding principles that emerge from that. One of which is that our vision for instruction will always drive our capital planning as we move forward. The second is that we will honor prior investments made by maximizing the use of our newer and modernized facilities as we move forward. We'll also look for opportunities to move programs closer to students whenever possible. Sometimes we conflate programs with facilities, and in fact, we can actually move programs and place them in different facilities and make sure that they're closer to our students. And again, program location really should be driven by student need. As we've heard, it's difficult to provide a full range of academic offerings in small schools. We must work to align the enrollments of our schools to support the program offerings that our students need and deserve. And finally, we believe that it's essential that the community is engaged and has an opportunity to participate in capital planning and change process for our shared community as we move forward. Repurposing buildings takes time and planning in order to best meet the needs of students and families. To ensure adequate planning and sufficient resources to coordinate this, we have broken this plan into 4 parts. And for some context, and this is applicable to all of these, there are some constraints to implementation. A full implementation plan takes at least 2 years from beginning to end. 2 years prior to realignment, we really want to take a look at program location to determine if can we serve students closer to where they live and ideally in their home schools. And we also need to look at the facilities that are involved, the facilities that are going to be repurposed and the receiving schools, to look at what things may need to happen in those schools and what things maybe we don't wish to invest in as we move forward. As we get to the year before the realignment, we need to do a boundary change in many places. If a school has a neighborhood catchment area, then we're going to need to redefine a boundary for that so that the families that live in that community will know where their students will attend by address as we move forward. This needs to be done fairly early in the year. We need to get that done by Thanksgiving so that families will know and we can have adequate time for our rollover, transportation planning, and our lottery process. And so that our staff will also know where students are going to go and where they likely will be following as we move forward. We also need to dedicate time for memorialization. As the school goes from being used for instruction to some other purpose, which is yet to be determined by the board, it's important for us to memorialize that with the community as we move forward. This first phase of this process involves Broadley Elementary School and Moeller Elementary School, and would be expected to involve those students attending another building in the 26-27 school year. So Broadley will cease to be used for instruction at the end of the 25-26 school year, and again, the students will be expected to attend another building in the 26-27 school year. The following schools in this list, Eastgate, East Columbus, Fairmore, all of which are FMP buildings, modernized buildings that were modernized in the mid-2000s, will be involved in the development of a boundary for Broadley Elementary School. In the early to mid-fall, a boundary will be determined with community input, again in the months of August to October. And during the fall, CCS will also be working with families who receive special education services, or language support services to ensure that those students have a continuity of services as we move through this process. We want to make sure that we connect those as we move forward. And in some cases, we've already begun to move some programming for Broadley. And that involved individual phone calls to families about those changes to ensure that, again, we were ensuring a continuity of service as we move forward. Again, wherever possible, to move those either to the student's home school or the closest school possible to where the student lives to minimize their transportation time, and again, improve its student experience as we move forward. Once the boundary is determined, in late November, families who live in the Broadley community will receive a letter informing them of the school that their child will attend by address in the 26-27 school year. At this time, staff will also know where students are going to go. The students from Broadway are intended to go in the following year. In December, once the boundaries are determined and once families are aware, we can begin to start school joining activities. You really want to lean into this process of bringing the school communities together so that students have an opportunity to learn about their new school, families have an opportunity to learn about the new schools as well. And that'll start in December with a series of, again, community chat events and the opportunity to participate in winter holiday programming. As we get into midwinter to early spring, for interested families in the Broadway community, there will be a preferential lottery afforded to them so that they have an opportunity to have school choice and have, again, a preferential opportunity for that. That lottery will be done prior to the general lottery, and the results will be available in mid to late March. In February, students will have the opportunity, again, to meet with and begin to build relationships, again, continuing to build relationships with their peers at the receiving schools. And there will also be family meet and greet events during that window of time as well. As we move into mid-spring and early summer, again, there are going to be additional opportunities to focus on bringing these school communities together. And as the school year comes to a close, again, we will have a culmination of activities involved in the memorialization of these two buildings. And again, those will build over time and will be a culmination of activities that have occurred during the year, again, to honor the staff and the students who have been at those buildings over time. In the late spring, before schools close, we're going to have an ask of our families who are involved in the schools. We want to make sure that all addresses are updated for their students so that we can make sure that we can reach out effectively to them over the summer to ensure that the most up-to-date transportation information is provided to them in August before the new school year starts. And then finally, over the summer, our operations team will work to put the final touches on the receiving schools to prepare them to receive the students as they begin the next school year. And again, in August, parents will receive the final transportation information for their students from the Broadway community. As we move on to Moeller, the process for Moeller will be identical to what I've articulated for Broadway. It'll follow the same roadmap. The difference being here, again, is that there will be different schools involved in terms of the boundary process, and those will be Livingston and Lincoln Park. Again, both modern facilities, FMP buildings that were opened in the late 2000s. And again, modernized facilities that we will be having those students move to over time. Again, we'll involve the community in the boundary process and we'll follow that exact same roadmap for Moeller Elementary School as well. The second phase of this work involves McGuffey. And again, that's the movement of the Columbus Alternative High School, which we would expect to happen no earlier than the 27-28 school year. Again, the target for that would be the 27-28 school year. This program, contrary to the two elementary schools that I mentioned earlier, doesn't have a boundary. It's a lottery school by choice, so we don't have to do a boundary for the school. That actually simplifies it a little bit for us. As you will recall, both East and Downtown High School were explored as potential receiving sites. Following the work that was done by the board earlier, there was some proposed legislation that was talked about this year that would have required us to potentially forfeit buildings that had less than 60% enrollment. This was not something that was considered previously, but it is something that we have to attend to as we move forward. And that has implications both for cause, the movement of cause, as well as Buckeye, and the movement around Buckeye as well. And so in both cases, we want to spend a little bit more time with the community because it would suggest at this point when we look at this, some changes in enrollment patterns, et cetera, will likely make East less likely to be able to accommodate cause without substantial reduction in enrollment. But we, again, want to spend a little bit more time with the community talking about options for it involving Downtown High School and East as we move forward. The third phase, again, is Buckeye Middle School. It's on a similar timeline as cause. Again, this one doesn't involve an anticipated change in boundary either. The feeder here pattern would not require a change in boundary. Again, the proposed legislation, which will require forfeiture of some of our facilities that are utilized for less than 60%, has implications for this one as well. So the initial proposal had involved moving Buckeye to Marion Franklin. While this makes better use of the Marion Franklin site, it would still be significantly underutilized and would establish a 612 building, which doesn't align with our desire to have standardized grade bands. And I think we've heard from many folks that the idea of having sixth graders in a high school was particularly not desirable to them. So again, we want to spend a little bit more time with Marion Franklin and South communities, the larger community there, to talk about a proposal that would allow for standardization of grade bands in that community and will allow for better utilization of the schools in that community, and one that aligns to the long-term FMP plan for that community as well. And then finally, Phase 4's West Broad Street. This one is contingent on funding because, as you will recall, the board, when they talked about repurposing this building, it was contingent on funding because the intent was to replace the building with a modern facility. Once funding is identified, the process for this would be expected to take about 3 years to complete. The first year would be a planning period for the design of the facility. Hello? I think we went away. The first year would be for the design of the facility. And again, the second 2 years would follow a very similar pattern to what we've seen with Broadley and Moeller. Moving forward, again, in Phase 1, we expect to have multiple opportunities for students and families to engage in the process during the coming year. The first of these would be in the definition of the boundary for the new attendance zones for both of these schools. And once boundaries are established, there'll be a number, again, of engagement opportunities to bring these schools together. And again, plenty of opportunity for our families to participate in that, and that's part of our ongoing plan. Again, Phases 2 and 3 will also involve engagement activities in the 25-26 school year to further develop plans for both Cause and Buckeye as we move forward. And finally, again, this is just the first step in aligning our facilities and capital plan to the vision for instruction. And again, our improved student instructional experience and experience for them. Again, we're in the process now of developing a comprehensive master plan. To fulfill this vision is going to require more than realignment. It's going to require thoughts around facility maintenance, realignment of our facilities, improvements and renovations, and new construction. There's really no way to get here without talking about new construction as well. We'll share this plan with the community, and again, we plan to engage the community in conversations with the board, annual conversations regarding how we invest capital dollars, and how again, we plan and use the funding that the community has provided to us to be able to meet the needs of students as we move forward. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, Dr. Brown. Let's open the floor for questions. Board Member Vera.
Thank you, President Cole, and thank you, Dr. Brown and Dr. Chapman. So I appreciate, the detail that was given to this tonight. I guess my question is really around the strategy for this engagement. I've seen that on several slides. At some point, will we see what this engagement strategy is actually going to consist of, both for the boundary piece and just for some of the sites, as you indicated, for Cause and Buckeye, obviously not boundary dependent, but at what point will we see what your actual engagement strategy is?
So I think the first step was making sure that we're fulfilling the first request from the board of coming back to the table about the plan. I know that we talked about, the 5 buildings, but it's very important for us to make it clear that the transition and the realignment of those 5 sites is not all happening at one time. Mm-hmm. It is important for us to make sure that we are mapping out these transitions and all of this realignment work over time. And so the first phase, we really wanted to just talk about each phase, and the first phase of this work will include the 2 elementary schools. Mm-hmm. And we will be certainly beginning the process. When we look on slide 20, we talk about the engagement for those 2 elementary schools. The first part of that engagement will involve the boundary process. And so we'll be coming back certainly in the fall, certainly inviting the board and our entire community, but certainly the engagement will be with those respective communities and the receiving communities. We want to make sure that they have an opportunity to be involved in this process over the fall, August, September, and October, so that they, really have agency as a part of the next steps. So we'll be back to the board in the fall with next steps around the engagement, the opportunities for our community to be a part of these conversations, really setting out, expectations about, the conversations with the elementary schools will look different because we're talking about boundaries, and then the conversations with Buckeye and COS, the other schools will be starting at a different point.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, the engagement in the fall is specifically for the elementary schools, and then you will come back before us with a timeline as to when the engagement will begin for middle and COS.
No, so the engagement will come back in the fall with the engagement plan for all of the work. The engagement for the elementary schools will look different because we're talking about boundaries.
Okay.
For example, for Buckeye and COS, there are different conversations. We're not ready to dig right into boundaries because we still need to talk about the plan as it relates to the grade configuration and where we go next with the next steps of that phase. And then as it relates to West Broad, that's a different category. So we've grouped the schools in terms of the phases as in terms of implementation because we're not doing all of this work at once. And so in the fall, we'll return with a full engagement plan. But for now, we want everyone to understand that we're staggering or making sure that we're mapping this work out over time and what they can expect when as it relates to the phases of the implementation.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so I'm assuming top of fall, but we're flexible that somewhere when the leaves start to change is when we're talking, because fall is a broad period of time.
Well, so for example, we have already calendared our meeting with you next week at the Community Engagement Board Committee. We're working on our conversations to talk about how that board committee can specifically support this strategy and other strategies related to the engagement that's going to happen in the fall. So our hope is to continue to tee up these conversations now so we are all ready and geared up for the work that will happen in the fall. But as we have just throughout this year, I have provided regular updates to the board once a month to make sure that even though this work is happening behind the scenes, the full board has an insight into what's happening on this work. So we can certainly continue to provide updates regularly. That cadence may, increase as there has several moving targets and several moving pieces in action in the fall, but certainly we'll be starting that conversation next week at the engagement subcommittee.
Thank you. And then my last question is in regards to the lottery information that was placed, I believe, on slide 17. Can families anticipate any, additional programs or services that are going to now be added to these sites because of consolidation? I guess you talked about more programs and services being put in different buildings. When families are going to apply for the lottery, how will they know what sites have been more programming has been added or services that they're looking for? What would that lottery process look like?
So the lottery would be separate. The families for the schools that are going through the realignment process, certainly they would have the option to attend what would now be their new neighborhood school. And when we're, again, increasing the enrollment at our neighborhood elementary schools, we are able to offer more services. So, for example, the families should be able to access now their ESL services and their SPED services at their neighborhood school. They will also still have an option to participate in the lottery if they choose, which would be another option in addition to the options at their neighborhood school. So all of that will be explained to families before, in advance of the lottery even opening, so that they'll know what options they would have if they chose Path A to participate or engage at their neighborhood school, or if they wanted to explore many of the lottery options that all families have access to.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any additional questions? Dr. Pierce had one, and then we'll have Board Member Ingalls.
I think this is more of a request. So one, thank you all for sharing this information. I think it gives us a good starting point. My request is, and I've given this request kind of earlier, I think, in February, is there a way that we can align what the superintendent has presented with our board committee work? So specifically, I think it's great that she will be meeting with our community engagement team, and I'm assuming communications will be going to that meeting with you, and you all will have the opportunity to really engage on how we are going to engage the community. But I think there's additional opportunity when we look at the lottery process. Is that going to require that we need to change our policies as it relates to the lottery? Is there an opportunity for us to look at other policies that might be impacted by this? When we think about the potential legislation that is coming from the State House, is there a conversation that needs to be had in our Policy and Governance Committee? And then also, I think a number of the questions as they relate to capacity, to various issues, of course, align with Board Member Adair's committee with ETRM. So is there an opportunity for our board to, I don't know, have a working session specifically with the committee chairs to be able to align their committee work with this plan that has been presented by Dr. Chapman?
So thank you for the question. That has been anticipated. In fact, that has been a direct request of the superintendent and the administration, particularly in our leadership meetings, where we're talking about how we're going to align work opportunity, putting the board to work via committee, particularly with realignment, AFAC, the Academic Realignment Committee. We'll also have the opportunity, she's already, as stated, engaged SEAC, that committee, with regards to how they're going to plan for community engagement. So that is actually in progress happening, and the answer in general and in full is yes.
I guess my question is, it seems like it's coming from the superintendent. Is it working two-way where it's coming from the committees as well?
It'll be reciprocated, yes.
Excellent.
There'll be reciprocation. And I hope to see you at one of them.
We'll see.
Okay. All right. Board Member Ingalls.
So on one of the last slides, it talks about the master plan. And this is a question that I get asked all the time is, where's the master plan? What's going on? What's the timeline? And when will it be shared? Do you have any updates on that you can share with us?
I can share a few comments. I know that we know that the last facility master plan that we had was in 2019. Around 2019, we engaged with the community to engage in our facility master planning process. That certainly, there was an opportunity to continue to implement that plan, but we did not go back to the ballot to secure the funding for that plan. A lot has changed since then. And so now we need to update that plan. That certainly want to make sure that all of the conversations that we've been having about realigning our facility assets to support the vision, any conversations that we're having around realignment. We've talked a lot, and the board has voted on demolition. We need to make sure that the buildings that were in the previous segments for building new construction are accurately and reflects all of that is in one plan. And so that currently is a need. We have already done an RFQ for a vendor to accept a bid for to do that work. And we are in the process now of negotiating the contract with that vendor. And then once we have finished or completed the negotiations for that vendor, then that agenda item will be on the board legislation for your consideration to approve or to vote on whether or not we want to move forward with the vendor doing that work. In the last facility master plan that the district, when we engaged in that process, the process was about 2 years. And so we're again negotiating with the vendor to make sure that the timeline, we have an alignment and agreement on that timeline. So once we have the contract and then we board that information or the board takes a vote on that legislation, then the process will begin for designing, creating, and engaging with our community around one plan that really speaks to our academic vision and how our facilities and resources align to that. That includes new construction, that includes realignment where we would want to close, consolidate. It includes the need where we talked about today of having traditional grade bands for all of our schools. So that work will be reflected in that one document. We won't have to go to several different documents to really better understand how all of these really integral pieces and parts fit together.
All right.
Yeah, and so it sounds like the master plan is still a few years out from being complete. How can we as a board support you and the administration throughout this process, but also be accountable to our community who's looking to really fully understand that vision and fully understand that work as we're doing work without a master plan?
Yeah, so the work must continue. We can't stop and we can't slow down. We know that some of these decisions are really urgent because our students can't wait. We talked about the age and condition of our buildings. We talked about the needs of our students and the types of learning environments that they should have access to. And so we know that I know that our board shares that sense of urgency and shares that similar concerns that we have to continue to have these conversations. We have to continue to make these decisions. I think that prioritizing this work, as we've just talked about, the decisions that we've already made, as well as continuing to keep this top of mind for everyone, continuing to restate why this work is important, why our realignment work is really critical for our district and for our community. I think keeping it top of mind and talking about the process. So we'll continue to create space for us to have those conversations at the board table. When we, certainly when we're moving forward with the facility master plan, we will need everyone to be engaged, that's collectively us, as well as our broader community, to be engaged in that process and to share their feedback so that it can be a resource that really reflects not only where we are right now, but where we want to go in the next 10 to 15 years.
Are there any additional questions? You have one more?
Yeah, I have one more, and it's a little bit of a different topic. So the West Broad Elementary, the bullet point says once funding is identified, the process would be expected to take approximately 3 years to complete. Yeah. And I anticipate we haven't just been sitting on our hands. So is there anything that we can share with the community as far as what those conversations for funding have entailed to date?
Yes. I'll defer to Vice President Adair because this has been top of mind for the ETRM committee. They have been talking about this and prioritizing this conversation and the next steps as relates to West Broad.
Thank you, Superintendent. Yes, the ETRM committee in the last meeting did start these conversations around understanding different funding models, not just with West Broad, but also as we start to move on properties like Broadley. Figuring out what to do with these assets will be part of the work of the ETRM committee, as we are the committee that is in charge of making sure that we are appropriately using and maintaining or dispersing our assets. So we will start our work very fully in the fall as we start to have more of these properties that we have to discuss, as well as different funding mechanisms. And so this will be part of our agendas. I'll turn it over to the treasurer really quick to maybe talk a little bit about what he shared with the committee.
Yeah, thank you. Great question on financing. So at last month's ETRMC, we we discussed 4 options that we would have with our permanent improvement funds. Pay-go, where we pay cash as we go for the facilities. TAN, which is a short-term tax anticipation note up to 10 years. A COPS, Certificate of Participation, which could be financed up to 30 years, or a PPP, private-public partnership. Since it was mentioned tonight with West Broad and kind of the financing conditions on that, have a lot of conversations on a weekly basis with municipal advisors and our folks in the financial markets. And if the board were to make a decision tonight, for example, hypothetically, we could have the funds to move forward in our bank account within 12 to 16 weeks. So from a financial standpoint, we can move rapidly. We have those discussions all the time. And I liken this process to when you're buying a house, if you will. We've kind of been pre-qualified. We have the permanent improvement levy, which frees up those options. What we need from a financing standpoint now is how much is that house we're going to buy? And then we can truly work rapidly. I think 12 to 16 weeks is pretty quick when you consider a facilities project. We'll have the funding source secured. So from my standpoint, that's the last of the concerns at this point. We know we have options available to fund, and we can move rapidly. Again, 12 to 16 weeks in this market is what we're being told.
I think part of it is kind of simultaneous discussions with us figuring out money and bringing that back to the board, but then what AFEC is working on about the alignment and the timing and the priority. And so those things need to match, especially as we are continuing to be hit with, you know, things from our state house where we have to react. And so if we choose to use the PI, that's what we're using it for, and it really limits what we can do in other projects. So again, we have a lot to discuss, but we're working on that, and our committee members are great, and the board members that are participating in the committees are great. And so I anticipate lots of work on this in the fall.
All right.
One last question. Board Member Ingalls indicated that, you know, how do we share the information with the community as it relates to some of the work that we are doing around our facilities? And looking at our website, I wonder if there's a way that we can highlight the buildings that we have marked for demolition, kind of some of the plans for phase 1, 2, and 3 of the realignment plan, and really something just high level, something that our community can maybe interact with very easily, very user friendly, to let them be aware of this information. I think that might be very helpful to communicate with the community, because we can't assume that they're going to go and look at these PowerPoint presentations and go through them. Just a nice one-pager or bullet points that kind of capture.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We've had that conversation, actually. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Always good for one mind. Just before we move on, I just have a couple of questions, particularly as it relates to goals and guardrails of the district. You've done a wonderful job of, you know, highlighting the portrait of a graduate that we adopted some years ago. But I think above and beyond that is, how do we think about or think through what this is going to do for improving student outcomes in this process? How do you anticipate incorporating our goals and our guardrails into this series of conversations?
Yeah, so when we started the presentation, for context, we certainly anchored this work in our portrait of a graduate, our board goals, and our board guardrails. When we think about, there were a couple of slides that explained when we have so many buildings that are underutilized, meaning we're pouring more resources into the building, we have an opportunity to realign these spaces and realign our buildings. We have an opportunity to provide more services, and those services in one location, right? And so we're really able to wrap our arms around the students' needs, the staff needs, and to provide them with the supports and to provide them with the programming that they need to be successful. And so we certainly see this as a strategy that is going to help us to deliver on that promise as it relates to our board goals, as well as our guardrails, and providing more support to our students as well as our staff as we continue to do this work.
Okay, so the idea here then is not just that we're transitioning students into new buildings with modern amenities, those types of things, but that we're also anticipating an increase in student outcomes. We're actually looking at seeing some sort of improvement, particularly in the places that we've highlighted for mathematics, that we've highlighted in other areas. This is what you're saying you anticipate as well?
Absolutely. So we anticipate, more alignment with the student experience, increased alignment with our physical assets, our spaces, the facilities, but we're doing all of this in service of providing the students with the programming that they need so that they can achieve those goals in kindergarten, in third grade, in sixth grade, in ninth grade. That's why we're doing this work. And it's important for us to keep the needs of our students and our families and our staff at the center of these conversations. All of the schools that we talked about, and we talked about Moeller and Broadley, Dr. Brown explained that these schools, when we're transitioning these school communities, they will be moving to more modern facilities, right? And as a part of that, we talked about what they would gain as a part of that. And that's not just brick and mortar, right? Mm-hmm. That is also in the programming and the services that they would be offered due to us being able to offer more programming when we have just trying to get to more of an average size elementary school at this point. It won't be at 500 just yet, but still just getting in the average size elementary school, they can have a full complement of services, support services that are offered to the students and to the families.
All right, so I appreciate that. I see a unique opportunity here. I see the opportunity particularly in the guardrail space. 80% of that work is you all's. I see some opportunity for us to figure out how we incorporate that into our monitoring reports, possibly for guardrail. So I know we have Sindel on the call or in the meeting with us right now, virtually. Perhaps as you move forward, we figure out how we do that?
Well, certainly, President Cole, I was just going to highlight that at the AFAC board committee meeting next week, we'll actually be talking about our guardrails, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss the next steps as we set those interim metrics for the guardrails. So we can keep this as top of mind for that meeting next week. We'll also be following up on this conversation and making space for additional conversations related to tonight's presentation at the AFAC meeting next week. So for anyone who has additional questions or would like to engage, as well as at the engagement board committee meeting next week as well. So that's 2 board committees where we'll be following up regarding this presentation. And so it's another invitation for our community to engage and, again, share and provide us with additional feedback.
All right. I thank you so much for the presentation. If there aren't any additional questions or recommendations, we'll move on. Thank you again, Dr. Chapman.
Thank you. Thank you,
We
Dr.
look forward to next week. And in addition to that, the door is always open. The door is always open for folks to come to committee meetings and participate, offer their insights and feedback, board members or otherwise. So I just want to always make that known. We'll move on to our executive report updates. I take it that you don't have one beyond this.
I do not have any additional reports or updates tonight, President Cole. Thank you.
She said, I don't want to suck up too much oxygen. Is that what it was? All right, Mr. Treasurer.
No report this evening.
All right, Mr. Internal Auditor.
No report this evening.
Okay, all right. We'll move right on then to voting on the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists from 9.1 to 24.4. All right. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion.
It's been moved and seconded.
Dr. Pierce.
With the exception of 15.1, 15.2, and 15.3, which I vote no, yes.
15.2, 15.3, and
15.1, 2, and 3.
You. Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
Mr. Simmons.
Yes.
Vice President Adair.
Yes.
Ms. Vera.
Yes.
Ms. Ingles.
Yes.
President Cole.
Yes. All right, we'll move into our individual sections on other legislation. I believe that there is a motion for 25.1.
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel 25.1.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Can we call a roll?
Ms. Vera?
Yes.
Ms. Ingles?
Yes.
Dr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Vice President Adair?
Yes.
President Cole?
I abstain.
Motion carried.
All right. 25.2, award of contract to Westfield Consulting Group. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Can we call the roll?
Ms. Reyes?
Yes. Sarah wants to discuss.
Okay.
I just want to,
Point of order.
yeah, I'm sorry. For 25.2, I'm still unclear what exactly they're doing for the district, and so I just want to say my vote will reflect that unclarity.
Okay. So, Madam Superintendent, is there opportunity right now to provide some clarification on how this is essential?
If that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Woods? Good evening, good sir.
Good evening, Board Chair.
All right.
It's good to see you, Board Member, Superintendent, Treasurer,
Internal auditor.
Auditor. I want to acknowledge everyone today. Yeah, so in the attachments with this document, we provided an executive summary of some of the value add of this particular work, the rationale for it. I won't read all of that detail. We also provided an overview of the firm that will be helping us do this work. But in general terms, it's important for us to recognize that over the last couple years, specifically since the improvement of the PI levy in December 2023, we've seen an increase in both the complexity and the scope of the projects that our staff are working on currently. What hasn't changed is the number of those staff that's doing that work. We recognize also with some recent assessments and some internal audits, I won't go into detail, but there are some risks that we've identified in that department, and we believe that there are some one-time fixes that we need the help of a third party to come in and help us to minimize or mitigate some of that risk while allowing the current project team and staff to continue focusing on delivering on the work related to the permanent improvement levy. And now we have coming forward some of the realignment activities. So it's really positioning ourselves for success as we continue to increase the volume and scope of work that we're doing in the district around our facilities and our buildings. I'll pause there for additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Are there any questions at this point? Board Member Ingles?
Yeah, is this related to the master plan work?
The master plan is a separate vendor, separate work. That work is currently being negotiated, as the superintendent mentioned. This work is really focused on building internal capacity within the district and within the capital improvements team specifically. So it's a separate project from the master plan work.
Dr. Pierce?
How do we maintain that increased capacity that will be built by this contract? Do we just keep going contract? Like, how do we maintain that capacity?
It's a great question. So, you know, some of the improvements are around technical things, making sure that we're documenting and have standard operating procedures that can be leveraged consistently or project over project. It involves ensuring that we have the right system so that we can provide transparency, provide ongoing updates to the board around project status. So it's really improving some of the technical capabilities in that department, and that becomes sustainable for long-term work as we move forward.
Just a clarifying question. So currently, our team does not have the capacity nor skill set nor knowledge to create these templates or to create the toolkit necessary to keep us moving forward?
That is a question, correct?
That's a question.
No,
Yes.
that's not, that would not be an accurate reflection.
Okay.
What we are saying is that since in the last couple of months, we've partnered with a couple of different entities to come in and do a review to assess where some areas of opportunity and growth are for the department. And so they've provided us with some feedback. And so this was a next step where they said there's some foundational work that needs to be established before we, embark on bigger projects, and there was an opportunity to address that work. So it was increasing the capacity of the team to build that foundational work that needs to happen.
So I appreciate that. As I read through the attachments, the 34-page document that you gave with us, it talks about how they're bringing in templates and they're bringing in pretty much a toolkit that we will be able to use. And so my question is, currently our team doesn't have that. We need the toolkit to increase our capacity.
There are new and additional resources as well as expertise that we could take advantage of.
So again, that connects to my first question was, how do we ensure that our team is being properly trained, that in the future we won't have to go back out to seek a consultant company to get the toolkit necessary, but that our team will be able to bring those to the table?
This would be setting that foundation.
I thank you, Board Member Simmons.
Thank you, President Cole. I just had a couple questions about the selection and how LEDE may have been involved. I see on the agenda item that the outreach department was notified of the opportunity, but the outreach coordinator did not participate in the selection process. I was wondering if you could share why that was.
So the outreach coordinator, so if I can just take a step back, I just want to acknowledge the capital improvements team. That team is amazing. They do amazing work. They do a lot of work. I think we have over 170 projects that we're working on this summer. So I just want to acknowledge that team for the great work that they do. As it relates to your question, specifically Board Member Simmons, we did heavily engage the LED outreach coordinator in the process of identifying resources to apply for the RFQ. When we actually did the interview and the screening of the vendor, there was a more specific skill sets that we were looking to bring to those conversations. So the outreach coordinator didn't necessarily have those technical skill sets that we were looking to screen this vendor for, and we engaged other individuals to help us better screen this applicant for this work.
Thank you. Could you speak to maybe some of the technical differences that will help me get a better understanding of why this work is so valuable?
Yeah, it's experience in leading large-scale facilities projects. It's experience in developing facilities management planning documents, right? It's experience in identifying risk management procedures to mitigate risks in the department that currently exist. Those are the skill sets that we wanted the interview panel to have as we were talking to this particular applicant.
Thank you. And then just my last question, why house this work separately from the master plan? I think it was Board Member Ingalls who asked about that, and you responded that this work was separate. It sounds like maybe there's a broader desire to bring all of our different facility work under one, at least one plan. So why is this work separate?
So it's a sense of urgency. Right? It's almost like we're trying to have multiple work streams. So we recognize that we have to build internal capacity. We recognize that we have to launch a master planning process. Those two things are related, but they're separate kind of work streams. So we want to make sure that we're accelerating this work as fast as we can, because as everyone mentioned today in earlier conversations, we have a lot of things that are going on, and we have to accelerate our ability to implement this work as we move forward. And by having these two separate work streams, it really puts us in a better position to move the work forward faster.
And then what are the negative consequences if this work was not able to move forward at the speed you desire?
I think that it's really about long-term risk mitigation. I think the major negative implications are around, do we have the capacity and bandwidth to continue to implement the ongoing permanent improvement work. Remember, this is the first time that I think we've received a levy that is ongoing funding. It's not funding for a year or 2 years, it's ongoing funding. So we know that scale and scope of work is going to continue. It's really having the long-term capacity to ensure that we can implement against the PI levy, we can implement against the realignment work that's coming down the pike, we can implement against the master planning projects that are going to be coming down, and do that in a way where we have fidelity, we show fiduciary responsibility in how we're allocating our funds. We can communicate that via transparent data tracking. It's really about the long-term sustainability of this work as we move forward.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Board Vice President.
Mr. Woods, how many vendors bid on this?
It's a tight labor market. We did outreach to multiple vendors, multiple construction agencies, some of the largest nationally. We had one vendor bid on this work. I will tell you that through the screening, through our due diligence, in conversation with some subject matter experts, the vendor is adequately or more than adequately positioned to help us do the scope of work that we put out for this RFQ. So I'm very confident that this is the right vendor to do this work at this time.
Mr. Woods, what is the deliverable under this contract?
So some of the deliverable, there's multiple deliverables. Some of them are in the summary document. I don't want to read the document for you, but I can tell you there are deliverables around ensuring that we have risk mitigation strategies, which is something that was identified in some of our audit work, if I can be specific. It's making sure that we have deliverables around how are we creating standard operating procedures for this work as we move forward. It's having deliverables around how do we ensure that we have the right systems in place and making recommendations to ensure that we can communicate with transparency to the board and stakeholders. So I think the actual document has multiple deliverables, and those are a few.
And what is the length of this contract?
It's a 9-month engagement, 30 hours per week. It's part-time.
Part-time?
Yeah.
And is the vendor to work on site?
It's a hybrid facility. It's a hybrid position. There are going to be some on-site and some remote work that's necessary. And I will tell you, this is not unique to Columbus City Schools. This model really allows us to obtain the highest level of skills, right, in a way that allows the flexibility to attract these individuals that can deliver on the scope of work in the short amount of time that we have. And this is not an uncommon approach to securing executive level talent to help move this work forward.
Board Member Ingalls.
Board President, I would like to make a motion to table this piece of legislation just because I don't want to vote no on a piece of legislation that is needed by the district at this time, but I do feel like I need more clarity around what exactly they're doing and providing to the district with this sum. And I have a few more questions that I would like to better understand before taking a vote. So I would make a motion that we table this legislation, bring it up at the next board meeting, so that I am not forced to vote no on this legislation.
All right, so, okay, so there's been a motion and a second. We already have a motion and second on the floor to accept this. What we will do is vote on your current motion.
Correct.
We'll vote on that, and then we'll vote on the preliminary motion that
It'll be tabled.
It will be tabled?
If it-
Correct.
It will be tabled altogether?
If it passes.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
We have a motion and a second on the table.
So motion,
Discussion.
Discussion, right? So in supporting the motion on the table, I will say that while the information shared in the attachment is helpful, it does not specifically speak to how it aligns with our district and the work that needs to be done. It is very broad. And so if there could be additional information that could be shared to narrow that focus, to talk about how it aligns with our goals and our guardrails, our strategic plan, even some of the recommended facilities conversations we've had here recently, including our demolitions resolutions, it would be extremely helpful.
All right, Madam VP.
I would also support the motion to table, so I am not forced to vote no. I was the one who actually pulled this off to discuss. I've already expressed a lot of concern. I've already asked you that same question I asked you 4 times already about what is the deliverable under this contract. I am the biggest cheerleader of capital improvements. I am the first one to say, let's move faster and let's get this done right. And I do have serious concerns about what I see here and just not understanding. And so I would support the motion to table and request that the previous questions I've asked please be answered.
All right, so motion has been presented and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Discussion.
Let's keep it short.
I just had one additional question for.
Which is what?
Well, never mind.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. We're ready to take action. Okay, so call the roll, please.
Ms. Ingles?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
In support of my colleagues, yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Vera? Vice President Adair?
Yes.
President Cole?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Forgive me for being short.
That's all right.
I didn't mean that, but at the same time, I think the argument and case had been made. So moving forward, Dr. Chapman, I think what would be helpful is if we get that additional information about how this particularly aligns. It sounds to me like there's in part an opportunity to equip not only your staff, but the board to better equip us in understanding. It sounds as if there's a level up opportunity. As I read through that legislation, and I'm kind of distilling even more of my numerous conversations with Mr. Woods, I see an opportunity that there's a level up, experience to be had with this company coming on. But I too have my shared concerns as well. All of us are major champions of what it's going to take to successfully realign Columbus City Schools. All of us, in any given point in time, have made some sort of request for hyper action, more swifter action to be taken to that effect. So it's not ownership by one particular person, it's ownership by all. So you heard from us, and we look forward to learning more as we move forward and taking action swiftly in the way that you need. I think what will be helpful for me moving forward as well is how important it is to you. You are our chief executive officer. You are the one who knows the lay of the land internally as you manage. I think it's helpful also for us to hear from you how important this is to you and the team. I think that'll be helpful too.
Thank you.
President Cole?
Yes, ma'am.
And I noticed that the attachment was not in the legislation either, so it's not here.
Okay.
So the attachment, Mr. Woods, that you were
It's in the-
referring to?
No, it's
have
in
to
there.
log in.
You got to on board.
Oh, okay, because I
Yeah.
don't see it here
Yeah,
now.
I have.
I read
Okay,
it.
okay.
I did look
Thank
at it.
you. It's not public facing then?
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all, colleagues. Thank you, administration. This is not, it's a no, but not yet. Come with it. Come with it. All right. Moving forward, we'll go to 25.3, authority to enter into service agreement with State House Impact Group. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
I second.
Motion and second, call the roll.
Vice President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Vera?
Yes.
Ms. Ingles?
Abstain?
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
President Cole?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion passes. All right, we'll go into 26.1, motion for executive session. Madam Vice President.
It is recommended the Board of Education move into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G4 to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. That is a motion.
Second.
Motion and second, call the roll.
Ms. Vera?
Yes.
Ms. Ingles?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
President Cole?
Yes.
Vice President Adair?
Yes.
Motion carried. We're in exec session.
All right. Thank you, board. Thank you, attending audience. We will go into executive session. Post-executive session, we will not return. You are all welcome to leave. Please get